Welcome to Wake Up Aligned. I'm glad that you're here. We are going to talk about topics of interest for chiropractors and chiropractic lifestyle. All right. Well, welcome back to another episode of Wake Up Aligned. So glad that you are with us today. And today we get to do something special, Tom. We get to talk about our mentors, right? The folks that don those blue coats, the people that you trust with your system and your family's legacy. And you've told me many times in private that you can't buy their hearts and you can't buy their talents, and they're priceless. We do a great job of talking about our membership and what's changing in our membership. But I would like all the listeners to know that that team of blue coats, they're in the trenches too. It's not like this company is just, hey, this is what we used to do, but we're not in practice, so we're hoping that this still is relevant. That's a bunch of BS. We have our team in practice serving people. And I want to start by talking about those people. And I think that's going to lead us into a conversation about concepts, right? And you have taught a lot about concepts. You've probably forgotten more than most people know. So hopefully we can keep this under our time constraint. First blue coat I'd like to do a shout out with. Dear friend of ours, Dr. Lisa Beagley. Right? If you don't know Dr. Lisa, she is in Seymour, Tennessee. That's outside of Knoxville. And she has a beautiful, I can't even call it a cabin because that doesn't do it justice. What would you call her place there in the mountains?
It's a mountain estate.
It's a mountain estate.
Literally.
I'm envisioning Juan Valdez harvesting coffee beans on the slopes there, pulling his mule. Yeah, a mountain estate. I think Dr. Lisa, from the day that she started this journey with AMC, Dr. Lisa has grown over 30 times compared to her original starting point with us. And you think about that. We frequently give out awards at our boot camps for bronze, doubling, gold, or silver, tripling, gold, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We don't have a medal for 30 plus times over where they started. That's just one example. Dr. David Landers, I think everybody knows Dr. David and his wife Maria. They just had their best month in the history of their practice. And Maria is a wonderful CA mentor. She does a great job with that. They're a certified training center. It's not like their practice is all that they do. Right? They have interest outside of their practice. They have a growing family, but they have that heart to continue to pour into other chiropractors. Dr. Megan Malone, who heads up our women's division and very instrumental in that. She had her best month that she's ever had. And we're seeing this with Dr. Egan and the Petersons down in San Antonio. I mean, just blue coats after blue coats after blue coats, setting all-time best records. And I wanted to just celebrate those folks because, yes, they are blue coats, but they're still part of this membership that we have. We're as interested in them achieving their full potential as we are any other member achieving that potential. Looks like you want to say something about that. I want to comment on that.
Not so much on the production.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's amazing when you think about the depth. If you really stop and think about what you're saying, and for those that, that are listening and you've never heard of this family known as AMC, and you can't comprehend the kind of growth and the results that we get. And then you've got the people that have been members somewhere along the way and they've unplugged for whatever reason. Do you realize what you're saying when you celebrate what you call our blue coats? That these people are still diving deeper and deeper into a system and a culture that no one's found the bottom yet, right? Most people operate on this subsurface level, right? They come in and they think, man, AMC's got a really great system of procedures, right? And they just stay right there in that procedural realm. But when they start digging deeper and deeper and find out that there's this whole different level of the conscious and subconscious level of patient compliance and people skills and people development and leadership development. There's all these concepts that you're wanting to talk about. Just to realize these people have been around for, in some cases, decades, and yet they're still hitting all-time highs. They're still loving it. How many chiropractors do you know, listeners, that burned out inside of 3 to 5 years? Maybe they burned out because income and expense ran too close together for too long, or they just found practicing in an inefficient model or a pain model as stressful, and they've moved on. Yet these people, they're passionately pouring into more chiropractors. They're wanting to impact the profession, and yet that doesn't even distract them from the fact that they're experiencing their greatest, levels of practice they've ever experienced. So it's a change of concept, but just think about what in the world is represented when we keep talking about this thing called the AMC family and the AMC system. And I also want to just add, before we dive into those concepts, back to something that you said. How did these people become blue coats of AMC? How is AMC so special? You think about, I've been around this profession my entire life, and I have seen a lot of the ugly. I've seen the bad. I've seen the people that are just so ego-driven. It's all about the dollar, and it's all about what I've done, and it's all about, I'm a great speaker and I can motivate you, but there's no substance to it, right? These people are here for the right reasons. They have a heart of gold. They have a heart to serve. They have a heart to make a difference. And nothing about the AMC family or the AMC culture is based in ego.
Right.
It's all based in love.
Mm-hmm.
That's what this family is based in. They love what they're doing, and AMC is built to love chiropractic, love chiropractors, and we will stay aligned with that from this day forward. You can't buy that. People ask, well, man, Tom, how did you accumulate this talent? Because they're talented. Not only do they have great hearts, I mean, that's wonderful. You can have a wonderful heart, but you might not have the talent. How did you gather? I'm like, I didn't do any of it. Right? You start something for the right reason and you base it on the right principles and love, and they are drawn to it. They want to be a part of something bigger than themselves, and AMC is bigger than any of us. And our mission is bigger than anything that you've ever seen in chiropractic. We're here to transform this profession, and I think we're doing it day by day, and it's because of those blue coats.
Let's talk about these concepts. Let's acknowledge that there are some people that have no idea what a concept even is. What's a concept? What's this thing that's they're talking about that's so important? I want to, in the time remaining, do it as much justice as we can, but I want to talk about what is a concept, how are they developed, how are they grown, what happens when your concepts grow, and just really that journey in finding better concepts and growing better concepts. Where do you want to start with that? It's the ball's in your court. I know his eyes are wide as saucers right now, listeners. I just threw a world of detail to him, and now he's having trouble processing. Let's start with what is a concept.
A concept really starts with an understanding, all right? There's an I guess it is an old principle because most principles are old, right? There's old as time, but there's a law that says you, Dr. Shannon can't, I can't, the others in the room here can't, the listener can't. Nobody can ever outgrow your concept. So what in the world is a concept? It's an understanding. If you have an understanding, your concept, what you've let somebody else, and most of our concepts have been created by what we've allowed into our ears, through our eyes, and actually the worst one is what we have said. All right, what we affirm to ourselves creates a concept where all these strange little creatures that live in our own little world, in our own little bubble, and whatever a teacher shared and whatever a parent shared or whatever a friend said or, a coach said, or what you experienced or what you saw at an event, that's what gets in that brain and it creates a concept. an understanding, for example, and I'm trying to put it in a chiropractic standpoint. He's always my go-to, but it blows people's minds when I talk about Dr. Osborne. And how does Dr. Osborne sit up there in Chattanooga, run $1.5 million, private pay practice, only work 3.5 days a week, average patient visits 3 minutes, doesn't have to process more than 15 new patients a month, right? And has all the time for his family, grandkids, and playing golf. Most people go, I don't get it. How's that possible? That's what a concept is. Just because you don't understand it doesn't mean it's any less true to Dr. Osborne, because he's living it. So the same goes for a concept of value, right? If you have a concept, I know you've got a friend that you've been talking to recently, and you have a new concept. I mean, your concepts have grown, Dr. McMurtry, over the years,
sure.
right? You know those concepts of like collection visit average, right? You have it in that there's absolutely no reason whatsoever that every chiropractor shouldn't have a CVA, collection visit average, of around $100 a visit.
Correct.
Right? You shared that with your friend that hasn't been around the culture for the last 10 years. And where's his concept stuck?
Right where he was when he left. That's
10
correct.
years ago.
That's right.
And he's got a collection visit average concept of $50. And when you told him the $100, he's like, whoa. What do you mean?
How do you do that is his exact
How
question.
do you do that? Which says, I don't understand. So that's what a concept is. How do you expand it? We can talk about how to expand your concepts and actions you can take and things that you can do that don't cost anything, that starts changing the concepts of your identity. See, if you have a concept of chiropractic, now you can tell somebody that's a passionate upper cervical chiropractor that, they're passionate about their technique. They have a concept. They have a concept of what that's worth, right? And then there's other people that they don't know what their concept of their identity is. They graduate and they wonder to themselves, am I a glorified physical therapist? I don't even know what I am. Well, that's a concept of value. That's a concept of identity. That's going to control. If you can't change that concept of identity of who you are, how you measure up, what you represent, the fact that the real concept is that you represent what those that have fought before you to give you the opportunity to deliver the chiropractic principle. If you don't have a good concept of what chiropractic really is and the history, and you listen to Professor Fuzzy Face back in school and they didn't give you the right premise, right? You listened to that, you took that in as truth. That's why I say you got to be very, very careful when you graduate school who you hang out with. Listen to me, listeners. If you're a student or you're someone that's a recent graduate, pay very close attention to what I'm saying, because those first 6 months to 2 years after you graduate, you're going to formulate a lot of your concepts of what you think is possible. And if you're hanging out with the wrong influence, those things are going to set in. And as you know, Dr. McMurtry, as a mentor to so many, that's what you work on, right? It's not about procedures. Yeah, you have to perfect protocols. You have to implement a process. But what do you spend most of your time as a mentor doing? Changing the junk from the past that's created these awkward or out of balance concepts. So you can have, or you will have, concepts of identity. They're going to fall in 4 categories in most cases.
The concepts will fall in 4 categories.
The concepts will fall in 4 categories in most cases. They're going to fall in a concept of identity, value, purpose, and beliefs.
It's interesting you said beliefs, because I think a lot of people think a concept is a belief system, but that's not all it is.
No, it's an understanding of what's possible, right? Because once you understand something, for example, I think one of the most powerful tools that is inside, for the listeners that are AMC members, you recognize that the certified training centers are probably one of the greatest assets that's available to AMC members. Yet it's probably one of the most underutilized. But what's a training center? What's a certified training center really about? Is it about perfecting? Are you going there for a day of training? Is the doctor going to sit there and role play with you all day long? No. You're there to go see the sermon in action rather than always hearing one, because you can sit and listen to it in a classroom setting. You can listen to the guy give the lecture, right? Or you can listen to a training module or watch a video training module. But when you get to go see it, and the first thing that happens, tell me, Dr. McMurtry, I'm going to throw this back to you in just a second, because you're experiencing this with the people that you mentor. What's the first thing they say? They see the doctor go, that's not that hard. Wow, that was pretty smooth how you did that. Wow, what they taught in class, I just saw it happen between a doctor-patient relationship conversation. I just experienced it. And then what's the first thing out of their mouth? They go, I could do that. Now you just went from, I don't understand how that works, to now I just saw it, and you just changed what? What just changed?
That concept.
You changed a concept from I can't do it to, well, that wasn't hard. I could see myself doing that. And that's the start of a concept. That's a start of a transition in concept. So when you talk about concepts, it's not beliefs. Now, beliefs are
part of it,
because if you have a limited belief in what chiropractic does or chiropractic offers, or you have a limited belief in your abilities, your capabilities, you have a limited belief. I don't know if I could ever see more than 100 patient visits a week. I love doing shout outs and examples and people I've worked with. I remember Dr. Darlene Euler from New York. Mm-hmm. I remember this conversation. I'd been working with her for probably 6 months or more. And I'm on this conversation. I actually remember where I was. I was in my truck. I was driving. I remember what street I was on. And we got down to the nth degree of her concept of time, her concept of how many patient visits that she could see in an hour. And in her head, she could not figure out how she could ever see more than 4 visits an hour. And we broke that down as to, okay, what will that produce in the end result? Because really, folks, if you don't have a good concept of time and using your time, that's going to limit you more than anything, because that is the one thing that controls all of us. Some of us have physical limitations, some of us have mental limitations, but all of us have time limitations. And she had a concept that and the way she was doing it, processing it, she couldn't see more than 4 people an hour. As soon as we worked on that, as soon as we addressed and tweaked and changed, I mean, that phone call, she flat out freaked out. Mm-hmm. When I said, no, we're going to get it to where you can see 7 an hour. And we're going to get it to where you can see, I remember she freaked out on the idea that she could ever see more than 4 new patients a week. And I said, no, we're going to get it to where you see 10 a week. The freak out was, I don't know how I could do that. So what did we start working on? We started working on the process and the concepts of using time. And as we changed the concepts of time, using time became more efficient. She just reported to me. It's funny that we're recording this today. She just reported this to me just last week that she just had her biggest month in the history of her practice. And isn't it funny that it's about 1 year after we had a conversation? Now, she's been in practice 27 years. 27 years, folks. That proves something. That proves practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes permanent. Only perfect practice makes perfect. All right? So she's been in practice for 27 years, but she wasn't practicing it in a perfect, harmonious way that produced the levels of prosperity that she deserved. Only when we started changing her concept. I haven't talked to her about marketing one time. I've been working with her for almost 2 years. Never have I talked about marketing. I haven't talked much about procedure. Most of it has been about concepts, her identity, her belief system. And one of those factors was her value. And then, of course, what we just talked about, the concept of time. Change the concept, you change the result. And remember where I started this segment when you threw it to me. I said, the old rule says you can never outgrow a concept. As long as she had a concept that I can't physically see and understand how I could ever see more than 4 patient visits an hour. Don't worry, she won't.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how does a person change their concepts? How do they change that programming that they've accepted as real? How do they get around the misunderstanding, right? I don't understand how that is done. What are the tried and true ways? What are the best ways to change your concepts?
Well, I'm going to say, I'm going to go back to the blue coats that you mentioned earlier. How is it 20 years later that they're still growing? Because once you find a source, number one rule, oh my gosh, Dr. Bill Harris taught this to me. Dr. Owen taught this to me. Once you find a source, a trusted source, you never unplug it from it because the source will keep feeding. So they're developing that over time. So the longer you're in it, your concepts will continue to change. Your concepts will continue to grow and develop. As such, your results will come along with it. Another thing is, folks, if you're a listener out there, you don't know who I am, you don't know what this AMC is, first of all, you got to find a source. Because if you're out there on an island and you think you're going to figure this out on your own, just stop kidding yourself. That's not going to happen. You need to find a source. If AMC can be that answer for you, then seek it out. But I'm going to say that, Dr. Shannon, how do you go about changing concepts? You hang out with the people with the concepts that you want and desire. Find and seek out those that have what you want that can help you develop and change these outlooks and these concepts and these understandings. Another thing, as I mentioned, as an AMC member, the most underutilized asset in AMC should be the most overutilized asset inside of AMC. So I've already shared one way. Use the certified training centers. A young man that I just had lunch with this week, he just opened, hit the ground running. I think that he's had 15 new patients in his first 10 days open, decent start. But one of the first things I said to him at lunch, I said, inside the next 60 days, you are going to be at a minimum of 3 certified training centers, because a young doctor like that, he's developing his concepts of what's possible, his understandings. He needs to go see that sermon in action rather than hearing it. All right. Lastly, I know you're wanting me to hit something that, what can somebody that's do from listening today? How can you start adjusting concepts? Well, one of the fastest routes to something that doesn't cost you a dime is something called affirmations. Now, if you're going to change your identity, you're going to change your value system, you're going to change your level of purpose or your foundation of purpose, you're going to change some of these limited beliefs. A limited belief can be, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Your limited beliefs of the money's evil, the root of all evil. No, the love of money is the root of all evil, right? These limited concepts that people pass around as truth. It's only truth if you accept it and believe it. It's not based in truth. So some of these factors of I'm not worthy, I don't measure up to the MDs, I'm just a chiropractor, chiropractic's not worth this, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to say the fastest route to changing the infinite is through the windows of your soul, which is your eyes. And there's both, listen to me, folks, the Bible says there's both life and death in the tongue. So as you profess your limited beliefs, as you profess those limited concepts, when you're affirming that to yourself, fastest way to do it is take a sheet of paper, write down as many limited beliefs as you possibly can think of. I mean, it should not be something that you can do in 5-10 minutes. It shouldn't be something that you're doing Saturday afternoon while you're watching the ball game. This should take probably weeks as it comes up and go, my gosh, that's a limited belief. I don't understand how somebody can, how do they not have to screen every weekend? I don't understand. I need 50 new patients a month just to survive. That's a concept because you're choosing to agree and believe with that when it's not true. Because Dr. Osborne's up there collecting $1.5 million a year, with, by the way, an overhead that's more in line with the 30 to 40%, right? Don't confuse motion with progress. If someone's collecting $1.5 million, but they have $1.3 million overhead, that's not a very efficient and prosperous model either. But if you don't understand how he's doing that, but you say, well, I have to have 50 new patients a month just to survive. Well, that's a model. That's a concept of model of practice. Your concept and your model of practice is failing you. Chiropractic's not failing you. Your market's not failing you. Maybe not even your location is failing you. The people in your market's not failing you. Your model of practice, your concept of practice is failing you. So how do you do that? You take as long as it takes to just keep every time that you can think of a limited belief that falls under my identity, my value, my purpose, my belief, write them all out. What you believe, what you think, what you conceive as truth. And then on the other half of the paper, take your time to write the 180. Go in the exact opposite direction, 180 degrees, and write the exact opposite. So I'm strong, confident, and capable. I'm well supported. I'm well capable. Whatever those 180s are, write it out, and that becomes a list of affirmations.
Let's put a pin in it right there. This is going to be part 1 of concepts. We got a part 2 that we have to get to because we are just beginning to peel back the layers of this. And if we rush through the process of how do you change, then we're not really equipping these listeners fully to develop those new concepts. So this part 1, very important, very impactful. Join us again for part 2 of concepts, and that will be coming up next. And one more thing before we go. If you're a chiropractor who's searching for a better way to build a more sustainable, low-stress practice, then you can contact us at amcfamily.com. You can schedule a discovery session, or you can access any of our free content, webinars, podcasts, and the like.